Now it is time for us to listen to Sister Maria Treesa FCC. I'm so glad and proud to present one of my former students to speak to us on multiple jurisdiction in India and institutes of consecrated life, canonical perspectives. As Father Jerry had already introduced Sister Maria Treesa, she already holds a licentiate in Oriental Canon Law from the Maramita Kshetram and a doctorate from Pontifical Oriental Institute in Rome. And she is currently working as a judge in the Metropolitan Tribunal of the Archparty of Changanasheri. Sister Maria Treesa, please begin your presentation.
Respected fathers, brothers, and sisters, good evening. Let me begin. Multiple jurisdiction in India and institutes of consecrated life, canonical perspectives. Introduction. Unity in diversity is one of the characteristic features of India. Pope Francis said that the variety of ecclesial life which shines with great splendor throughout lands and nations is found in India. In fact, the generous collaboration and peaceful coexistence among the churches in India is beautiful and indeed rich. At present, the three churches sui juris, the Syro-Malabar, the Syro-Malankara, and the Latin Church, enjoy the power of jurisdiction in India with some exceptions in certain regions. The intention, nature, and effects of the jurisdiction granted to the Syro-Malabar Church with special reference to the apostolate of institutes of consecrated life are discussed in this paper. Intention behind granting jurisdiction to Syro-Malabar Church. It is a fundamental right of every Christian faithful to preserve the Christian identity in which he or she was born and has grown. Assuring all Christian faithful this right, CCO Canon 17 states, the Christian faithful have the right to worship God according to the prescriptions of their own church sui juris. This provision is perfectly in tune with the spirit of the Second Vatican Council, which upholds the preservation of Eastern liturgical rites, equal dignity, and right to rule themselves. Hence, CCO Canon 39 states that the rights of the Eastern churches are to be observed and promoted. In fidelity to the documents of the Second Vatican Council and in view of the present circumstances prevailing in India, the Roman Pontiff has provided the members of Syro-Malabar Church the opportunity to grow in faith and communion with Syro-Malabar Church, preserve the precious heritage of the Syro-Malabar rite, and hand it over to the future generations. In this context, it is important to recall that the Eastern Code obliges members of institutes of consecrated life to observe faithfully their own rite and to acquire greater knowledge and more complete practice of it. The nature of jurisdiction granted to the Syro-Malabar Church. In this letter to the bishops of India, Pope Francis decreed, I have therefore authorized the Congregation for Eastern Churches to provide for the pastoral care of the Syro-Malabar faithful throughout India. I decree also that the new circumscriptions, as with those already in existence, be entrusted to the pastoral care of the Major Archbishop of Ernakulam Angamali and to the Synod of Bishops of the Syro-Malabar Church according to the norms of the Code of Canons of the Eastern Churches. The expression pastoral care is a new term in the existing legislation, and the present legislation does not foresee a division between a pastoral jurisdiction and a non-pastoral or some other kind of jurisdiction. Though the letter speaks of the extension of the pastoral care and evangelization explicitly, it pronounces the extension of the proper territory implicitly, keeping wide open for a gradual and cautious application. Hence, the words used articulate that the whole territory of India is entrusted to the major archbishop and synod of bishops of Syro-Malabar Church. Regarding the jurisdiction, territorial factor. The power of the major archbishop is exercised validly within the territorial boundaries of the major archiepiscopal church, where the right proper to that church is observed and the canonical provisions are done by the major archbishop. Now, the whole of India becomes the proper territory where the power of the major archbishop, including the canonical provisions, is exercised validly and the Syro-Malabar right can be followed. Personal jurisdiction. The personal factor is governed by the norms of ascription. By CCO Canon 38, the Syro-Malabar faithful, even if they are under the care of the pastor of another church sui juris and participate actively in that parish and receive the sacraments from that church, remain ascribed to the Syro-Malabar Church and are under the personal jurisdiction of the major archbishop. Affirming this further, Pope Francis added, a member of the Syro-Malabar faithful, by virtue of the law itself, belongs to the Syro-Malabar parish where he or she is domiciled. Yet, at the same time, he or she can remain faithfully involved in the life and activities of the parish of the Latin Church. If the Syro-Malabar faithful join institutes of consecrated life belonging to another church sui juris, they still remain ascribed to the Syro-Malabar Church. The members of the Syro-Malabar Institutes of Consecrated Life who belong to other churches sui juris remain ascribed to their own churches. For when a person joins an institute of consecrated life or of another church sui juris, the original right of the person does not change. In practice, the Apostolic See grants this permission by way of an indult of accommodation, which simply allows the person to conform himself or herself to the rite observed by the religious institute. Therefore, the ascription and the original right of the Syro-Malabar consecrated person remains unchanged. Domicile. According to CCO Canon 913, members of the consecrated life acquire a domicile in the place where the house to which they are assigned is located. Therefore, the member of a Syro-Malabar Institute of Consecrated Life who is assigned to a house which works under the Latin Church gets a domicile in that place. A religious who becomes a parish priest may not be assigned to any house. In that case, he may have domicile in the eparchy in which he is serving at the completion of the 5th year. Therefore, a Syro-Malabar consecrated person can get a domicile in another church when, with regard to the assignment to a house or stay in that place. Effects. With the granting of this jurisdiction, many of the permissions can be granted by the major archbishop himself, which is a boon to several institutes of consecrated life. At the same time, the eparchal bishop has certain right to exercise vigilance and impose sanctions and penalties even on members and institutes of pontifical right. Concerned norms on apostolate. With the erection of the new eparchies, the members of consecrated life become part of a Syro-Malabar eparchy, while many have domicile in the Latin Church also. Both courts of canon law bring forth the norms to coordinate the apostolate of institutes of consecrated life at the eparchial or diocesan level. Apostolate proper to the institute. Houses of institutes of consecrated life, once legitimately erected, have the right to set up a chapel and exercise sacred ministries and to engage in apostolic activities proper to the institute in the manner prescribed by their statutes while being subject to the bishop. Without a just and legitimate reason, a bishop cannot prohibit the members of consecrated life from engaging in apostolate proper to their institute. Rather, he can only give laws and guidelines for directing their apostolate. Additional permission of the eparchal bishop is required to build houses, schools, clinics, and similar buildings distinct from the house. Associations of the faithful can be founded by the competent authorities in order to live and spread the charism of the institutes of consecrated life. Entrusted apostolate or function. The Eastern Code envisages many instances where the hierarchs or pastors entrust certain apostolates or functions to the members of consecrated life or request their collaboration. Erecting a parish in consecrated institutes, entrusting a parish to a member of consecrated life, imparting catechetical formation, committing a function of the church to consecrated persons, etc. are some of them. Institutes of consecrated life are to be promoted in the mission territories. The apostolic activities of non-clerical institute contribute equally to the mission of the church. CCO pays keen attention to safeguarding the patrimony of the institutes of consecrated life, even when they carry out the apostolate entrusted to them, and ask the hierarchs to give due regards to the observance of the religious discipline of the institutes, their own character and specific purpose. It also asks the hierarchs to seek the consent of the competent superiors before entrusting apostolic works or functions to consecrated persons. As per Canon 542, the superiors have to make available the help of their members for the spiritual good of the faithful, especially in the eparchy where they are living, if the local hierarch or pastor requests it. The canon also implies that the members of consecrated life can engage in apostolate proper to their institutes anywhere according to the need of the faithful under the general supervision of the eparchal bishop. As a general rule, both the Eastern Code and Latin Code stipulate the supervision of the eparchal bishop regarding the apostolate as it deals with the care of souls. According to CCO, members of consecrated life are subject to the local hierarch in matters pertaining to the works of apostolate. This means that the members of consecrated life are bound by the laws and guidelines issued by the local hierarch for various apostolic activities. It involves also the right of the local hierarch to have vigilance over them regarding these matters. If a member or community does not follow the common law or the instructions by the local hierarch on apostolate, he can intervene and take canonical steps to correct. Competence of eparchal bishop over apostolate. The eparchal bishop is the coordinator and promoter of all apostolates in the eparchy, and the apostolates of the institutes of consecrated life fall under his power. All the consecrated persons are subject to the power of the local hierarch in matters that pertain to the public celebration of divine worship, that is the liturgy, preaching of the word of God, religious and moral education of Christian faithful, catechetical and liturgical instruction, etc. Consecrated persons are bound by the common law as well as the prescriptions and guidelines issued by the local hierarch in matters concerning the decorum of clerical state. Eparchal bishop who founded or approved has the right to visit Catholic schools, appoint or remove teachers of Catholic education, and regulate the instruments of social communication. Contextual application. Then arises the question to which the hierarch or bishop should the Syro-Malabar consecrated persons or houses subject themselves? According to the present understanding, as per the guidelines from the Congregation for the Eastern Churches, the houses and institutions of the consecrated life of Syro-Malabar Church working under or depending on the Latin dioceses remain under the Latin Church, while the provincial houses, formation houses, independent institutions, etc. belong to the Syro-Malabar Church. In matters pertaining to the apostolate in the Latin Church, they are subject to the Latin bishops where they are domiciled. In all other matters, such as the liturgy, internal discipline, etc., they are subject to the eparchal bishop or the local hierarch of the Syro-Malabar Church where they have domicile. If the consecrated persons of Syro-Malabar origin are working as Latin pastors, they have to seek the required permissions for administering the sacraments. However, if the house or province is ascribed to the Latin Church, that is, with the permission of the Apostolic See, the consecrated observe the statutes of their institutes for the internal governance and religious discipline. But for liturgy and apostolate, they observe the laws of the Latin Church and of the diocese in which they are working. The members who, by reason of their office, ministry, or function in another church sui juris, are to have accurate formation in the knowledge and practice of their original right and the right of the church in which they work. Harmonious coordination. It is the prerogative of the institutes of consecrated life to carry out their apostolates, while the local hierarchs are to regulate them. For the effective management of both, the Eastern Court recommends that the major archbishop as well as the local hierarchs are to promote meetings with the superiors of the institutes of consecrated life at fixed times and whenever it appears opportune. There should be clear understanding between the hierarchs of the church and the superiors of the institutes of consecrated life. With proper respect for the norms and competence of each other, the hierarchs of the church and the superiors of the institutes of consecrated life may sign a contract before they begin to exercise the prospective apostolate and may include such norms in the statutes of the institute. For the harmonious coordination of the apostolates in a place of multiple jurisdiction, the common law entails periodic meetings of the eparchal bishops of different churches sui juris exercising power in the same territory so that they foster unity of action and combine the resources to promote the good of the religion. Mind of the Church. Having been made well aware of the present situation in India, Pope Francis stresses the need to be faithful to the traditions and patrimony of one's own right and provides set guidelines for the amicable solution to the problems that are likely to arise. Pope requests the Latin and Syro-Malabar pastors and the churches in India to be generous and cooperative. Syro-Malabar Churches continues its valued work in the Latin Church, and the Latin Church remain open, generously offering its hospitality to the members of the Syro-Malabar communities where they do not have church buildings of their own, which eventually would lead to deeper communion. Conclusion. In the present All India context, the Syro-Malabar Church is only in its infantile state of establishing itself. It has lack of personnel, infrastructure, finance, and other resources. Any growth or transition is a time of pain and difficulty. Jesus has rightly pointed out, the one who drinks old wine always finds it better. Hence, it is important that the institutes of consecrated life of Syro-Malabar Church have to feel with the Church and act with generous understanding and cooperation. The hierarchs of the Syro-Malabar Church, on the other hand, should not insist on quick implementation of the entire canon in a single step, but have to give necessary time for each step. Switching on to the requesting mode from the ordering or demanding mode, adopting a policy of sharing and cooperation, and respecting the autonomy of consecrated will help the true growth of the Syro-Malabar Church in India. Thank you.